Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast, episode number 141, Free Will. We've had some other episodes I've called Free Will, but this is free will as regards to its exercise in the political process. It's September 5th, Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Tanner and I are in the studio. It's actually about 7:30 in the morning here. Good morning, Tanner.
Good morning, David.
Tanner's looking great today. He's all fired up. We're all fired up. Hey, I got a little news. Your humble host is now going to be getting his own nationally syndicated radio show. So in the ongoing development of the movement, which is a big part of it is an information conversation. I won't call it an info war. It's a conversation. And my voice is being recognized, which I think is cool, which means this audience is being recognized. And I'm excited because I'm going to have a big pool of people that I've never spoken to before, and we'll be bringing them to the podcast. And I'm pretty confident that the viewership of the podcast and the size of the community will increase. And that's what this is all about. It's about the exercise of free will. The exercise of free will. I've been thinking a lot about where the movement is at and where are we as the American people, because we're all caught up in this election hubbub, which is mostly, from my perspective, a diversion. It's a diversion, kind of like bread and circuses. Have you ever heard of bread and circuses before?
No, I haven't.
Okay, that's a reference to the Roman Colosseum. And the idea was if you entertained the masses with entertainment, in that case, it was bloodlust, kind of like the NFL or the WWE or cage fighting. If you entertain the masses and give them circuses and keep their bellies full, the intelligentsia, the rulers, could do whatever they wanted to. And that's what happened. Now, Rome fell, and there's all these histories about how Rome fell. They're all inadequate. They're all models. They're all models. We have these models. We live our life by stories, models. And those models are wholly inadequate. Human beings are meaning-making machines. We come up with stories to explain our experience. We want to know what's going on. Or maybe we just get high. Whatever the case may be. The story may be, I like weed, right? We started out with, yes, ja. People are going to say, geez, David, what's the story with that? In fact, Tanner said, what's this? Because Tanner doesn't know that I'm a secret aficionado of electronic music. That's called drum and bass. It's very sparse. It's dance music. It's kind of hypnotic. And I like that one because the title is Yes, Jah, as in J-A-H, as in Yah. Jah, like the Rastafarians, yeah, Jah, man, yeah, God. Okay, it's God, which comes from Yahweh, which is the Hebrew abbreviation for the name of God, Yahweh. And I've been noticing on X that the anti-Semites are saying that the Jews worship Satan, Moloch. Oh, that's got me thinking, and I just want to share this. We're living at a time when every institution in the world is corrupt. It's corrupt from my perspective because what's the big category? Self-governance or tyranny. Self-governance. What does self-governance mean? Self-governance sounds like, we the people, by the people, for the people. No, that's not what it means. That's a very small part of it. It means I govern myself. I'm self-regulating, like down to the bacteria in my gut, like how I look, how I feel, how I talk, what I do, my choice, my exercise of free will, my exercise of my own free will. Say, I've got a choice now. Choice. I have a choice. I can fight and do whatever is necessary to maintain my self-governance, or I will be tyrannically governed. That's the top of the funnel. And you could even break it down further. You could say, how do you self-govern? Well, you got to have rules. You got to have a story. Got to have a story, right? You can't just wake up in the morning and go, oh, WTF. There's got to be a story. So what story are we going to live by? What stories are we living by? What models are we bringing into our framework to govern, to self-govern, to either be governed or self-governed? So, traditionally, we had this kind of concept of, there was a creator that granted us unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And everybody got an education to teach us how to be faithful. What does it mean to be faithful? It's really interesting. I was talking to my stepson just a couple of days ago. We were at the kitchen table, and I was excoriating him about certain issues. We don't have to get in the whole thing. We'll run so far behind we can't get done with the podcast. We'll be doing one of those Alex Jones 4-hour deals here. Can't do that yet. We're not that good. Now, my stepson's just entering high school. He's a freshman in high school, and he's got a beautiful young girlfriend he's in love with. It's true love. And I am, as his male model, tasked with trying to discuss these things with him. And he's a Catholic. He's Catholic. And I said to him, because I've been saying this to him for several years, hey, son, are you reading the Bible at all? Because I want to balance him out a little bit, because right now he's only got one thing on his mind. And that's dangerous when you get single-tracked.
Yeah.
You're a setup, right, to roll right off the road. And I said, are you reading the Bible at all? And he goes, yes, I am. I said, you are? When are you reading it? He goes, well, when I go for confession and I confess, the priest will assign me some biblical readings as part of my penance. And I was stunned by this. Stunned. And I mean, I pissed the young man off because, I'm his stepfather. He's got a real dad. His real dad's bringing him to church every Sunday. It's cool. But I said something I really meant. I said, son, that's bizarre. You're reading the Bible as a punishment. In other words, when you do something wrong, you get a penance, and then you're forced to go atone for your sin by reading the Bible. That's a very negative kind of relationship with the Bible. I don't have that. I don't read the Bible for penance. I read the Bible for insight. And he looked at me like, what do you mean? Because he has now associated the Bible with guilt. Now, I'm not trying to pick on his dad or the hierarchy of the Catholic Church. That's not my business. That's not my line of country. That's for Catholics to do. I got the Jewish people to work with, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But he has associated faith, the exercise of faith, which is basically steeping yourself in the Word or steeping yourself in the history of faith. It's the history of faith with a punishment. And that's not correct. That's incorrect to me from my street corner. And I look out at all these different institutions. Now, that's an institution. That came from someplace. That came from a hierarchical religious institution called the Catholic Church. Well, we got the Jewish Church, the Church of Judaism. It's not really called that. We don't have a Vatican. We're kind of a decentralized power structure. We're everywhere. We're nowhere and everywhere. And when I was involved in Orthodox Judaism, it was right after World War II. And the people that I prayed with, a lot of them had been in the concentration camps. These people were keeping their heads down, okay? Israel was a new country. When I started on this deal, it was like 15 years old, 10 years old. It was not established. It was not a military power. It was a ragtag group of people that were praying to make it to them. They were praying to get through the next day, right? Everybody was like, wow, we just experienced a genocide. What does that mean? Everybody was mega freaked out. There was kind of an unclear path into the future. Like, we don't want this to happen again. And that was about information. And now when I look out, I see this quite well-developed organizational structure that is dedicated to the military supremacy of Israel. And I just want to say, I don't get it. I mean, I understand historically and philosophically how it could happen. Like, you killed half our people. We're never letting that happen again. We're not dependent on anybody. In fact, we're going to shoot first this time. I get that. I get it. That makes a lot of sense to me in a material, historical, strategic perspective. Makes a lot of sense. But from a faith perspective, the world I live in, they have a book. It's called the Torah. It's the 5 books of Moses. It's called the Old Testament. You know, it's that part you don't read. Oh, probably you don't read the New Testament either. It's actually one book, the Testament, the history of faith, right? And they say, to the old dudes like me, all its paths are paths of peace. How can this be? If all of its paths are paths of peace, and the whole thing seems to be about a military adventure, boy, these two things kind of seem in contradiction to each other. I'm just saying. So I want to start out with yes, Jah, because the concept of monotheism of a God, that's from Abraham. That's a philosophical tradition that has had a tremendous impact on the world. So let's say you believe in God. Hey, you're self-governing because your governance is in your desire to live up to the commandments, which there was hundreds of them in the old book. And, Jesus came and said, let's just make it understandable. I didn't come to overthrow the law. I came to fulfill it. But let's just get it down to a constituent element, which is love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your might, and love your neighbor as you want to be loved. And if you follow those two, you're pretty good. George Carlin actually made a comedy routine out of this. We probably need to play that because it's hilarious. George Carlin. My producer Tanner is writing this down. He's writing it down. But was distilled. So you have self-governance because you have this model of human behavior. And if I'm loving my neighbor as I want to be loved, that kind of really explains, most things, right? And then we had the world of science. And the world of science said, this God thing, imaginary man in the sky. BS doesn't work. I'll tell you what works. Gunpowder works. Gunpowder is a more effective technique than faith. I'll show you how. I'll shoot you. Isn't that great? So we come up with this whole new scientific modality that eliminated the concept of self-governance because science was the governing body, which means it's the world of man's inquiry, the world of man's modeling. Like, for example, here's a great model. Leeches applied to the skin will suck out the disease. It's a great model. Worked great, right? Worked great. Here's a great model. Human stress works like stress on an arch. If you overstress an arch, or if you take out the keystone of an arch and you put stress on that arch, it'll collapse. And that's the model of human stress. And that's not exactly the way things work because I'm under a lot of stress and I'm thriving. Would you say I'm thriving, Tanner, pretty much? I feel like I'm thriving.
Yeah, it's hard for me because I've only known you for 2 years, almost 2 years now. So, but from what I've seen in those 2 years, I would say you're thriving.
I'm having a great time. And people are trying to clip me out. And my business is crazy. And I'm changing careers. And that's another thing, little news. I'm changing careers. I'm still in the tire business. You can still go to tireget.com. Call me. I'll get you whatever you need for tires. And we're going to talk about that more and more because we're fueling a media company now that's growing. I'm going to get a syndicated national radio show in a couple of weeks. My career is growing, and I'm excited about it. I'm so excited about it. I'm going to delve into it a little bit more because we're building this community. So that's twice I'm saying it because what can you do to help? Well, we're not going to get a lot of help from these algos. So as Tucker has suggested, and I keep saying, thank you again, Tucker, for your great idea. Please take the links to the podcast and repost them on all your socials. And that is really a tremendous thing we can do. Here in Minnesota, and of course, we have a national audience, but here in Minnesota, I have hundreds of party participants, political activists watch this. And they watch it because I hope they like the content, but we've become a center for political activism here in Minnesota. People want to see what I'm going to say and do. In fact, on the last podcast, no sooner had I pulled my sword out of my scabbard and made a comment that right when the podcast was over, someone texted me and was madder than hell at me. Madder than hell. So let me just start there because I didn't mention any names. This goes back to models. Like free will. Your free will is based on your models. How can you have free will if you can't interpret the world? I mean, you have to have some way to look at the world. And I'm looking at the world through my lens of description. And, if people don't like my lens of description, they don't like it. That's cool. We're Americans. We're not supposed to agree. We're supposed to discourse. That's our entertainment. And this person who I had commented about the activities that I'd seen the previous work was madder than hell at me. And I listened. And I have to say, my model was incomplete. So I'm not to delve into this at great length. I want to say my models. I don't live my life with hardcore judgments. When I find them, sometimes I'll find myself down on all fours on the floor, retching, trying to get them out of my energy. Because judgments control my perception and how I act in the world. And one of the reasons that I'm the age I am and willing to listen to music like Yes Ja, drum and bass, which I don't know there's many people my age like drum and bass. Kind of a young man's game, wouldn't you say?
I'd say. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I love it. Why? because I try to move out my judgments about such issues. Music. I try to find beauty in music everywhere, and I'm listening all the time. And when I find something I think is cool, I don't have a judgment that says, oh, people your age don't listen to drum and bass. I don't have that judgment. I mean, the music is for everyone. I do have one judgment about music. I don't like German military music. It brings up bad memories. But other than that, I'm good. And maybe I'll move that judgment out someday. It's possible. It's
I'll,
possible.
I'll bring some music to your attention. I'll see
Great.
what you say.
Great. That's cool. But, the model, when I have a model that's incomplete and then I make decisions, exercise my free will based on those decisions, I don't capture all of the information. I don't see all the information, and I react in a way that is suboptimal. So I'm continuously trying to expand my scope and act appropriately. And right now, 23 minutes in, because I realize that my friend Dan Schultz is listening, I want to say to everyone, because I also notice that people don't come to the podcast until about 20 minutes in. You notice that how it comes? That's where we start out with some opening music, a preamble, because we don't get the full audience on the live chat until about 20 minutes in. Now we're all here. We're all together. Okay, it's an election season. That is the exercise of free will. We've got self-governance and tyranny. Let us not worry too much about who the actors are who are fulfilling these roles, because if we come down one step from self-governance and tyranny, what do we have? We have republicanism and communism. I really don't care if they call it the Democrat Party. That's branding. You got to look at what their policies are, and we're going to talk about that. Have you been doing your homework? I have been. So my point is this. We get hung up on the salespeople, the salesmen or the saleswomen. They're just the salespeople for the ideologies of self-governance or tyranny. We have the world of faith and the world of self-governance, and we have the world of humanity, science, and being governed. One step down, republicanism and Marxism. Marxism has a lot of different branding, liberalism, progressivism, the Democrat Party. There's all kinds of, but the root is Marxism. And over here is self-governance. We have an election. I respect every one of you. And I want to thank you for your listenership and your viewership. The point of this podcast is to encourage every one of you, nay, I say demand it of myself, that wherever you are, you can go to the website trumpforce47.com. You can become a phone dialer. There's a phone dialing site. You can be in the most bluest of blue states and be a conservative and help in a swing state by making phone calls. You could come right to the volunteers in our own campaign here. And you could volunteer and we would find something for you to do if you lived in Spain, if you wanted to stay up and make the phone calls. This is a 2-month. We're 2 months out now. 2 months. It's like a athletic event. It's a sprint. We've got to get up off the couch and exercise our free will. If we don't have the will to maintain our self-governance, we will be governed, and we will not like it. We will not like it. I'm going to pull something forward I'm going to read this twice today. This is S2747. This is what's going to happen to us if there's a blue wave. In other words, if too big to rig fails. And in this is the bill sponsored by Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota that pulls forward or that nationalizes Minnesota's election law. This basically is what we do in Minnesota. Minnesota was the petri dish, the incubator of new voting rules. And here's what it says. This is under Findings 1B. Listen to this now. This is critical. It is the responsibility of the state and federal governments to ensure that every eligible citizen is registered to vote. I can't, I get choked up when I read stuff that's such a lie. This is a lie. This is a lie. It is the responsibility of the state and federal governments to ensure that every eligible citizen is registered to vote. That is a lie of the highest order. It's right at the preamble to this bill. It is not the responsibility of the state and federal government to ensure that every eligible citizen is registered to vote. That is completely contrary to our Constitution and to everything this country was founded upon. It is the responsibility of every citizen to exercise their free will. It has nothing to do with the government. We'll come back to this monstrosity shortly. This is the problem that we have. We are outsourcing our self-governance to people that wake up in the morning more than willing to govern me. And their governance is getting farther and farther away from my neighborhood, and they don't give a rip about what I think, feel, or want in my own life. They're telling me how I'm supposed to live. And that has got nothing to do with republicanism. Republicanism is the opposite of how we're living our lives here in the United States of America. The United States of America is a military dictatorship, and we just don't realize it yet because we have a manufactured consensus about our military might. And we're going to work on that. But I do have to say that the labeling of Yahweh, as the devil is misinformation of the highest order. There are millions of people who pray, who have no interest in world domination. Millions. And when this thing goes south, they're going to all get killed. And I don't want that to happen because I will be among them. So it's very self-centered that when we get this kind of broad-based hatred and these kind of judgments break loose, there are people of every group, Russians, New Yorkers, Englanders, Germans, Chinese, Catholics, Hindus, Indians, people of every stripe who agree in globalism. Their dog bowl, both their intellectual and spiritual dog bowls and their monetary dog bowls, is filled by their support of the globalist ideology. And globalism and republicanism are in stark contrast because globalism, and if you take a look at the thumbnail, remember this one, Workers of the World Unite? Communism is a worldwide globalist movement. Republicanism is your freedom to self-govern your neighborhood. These two things are polar opposites. And where is the left and where is self-governance? They've been working on this for hundreds of years. The left is organized in almost every respect, light years beyond where we are as self-governing citizens of a free country. That's why we're losing our freedom. We can't even get people to go to the polls on election day and vote. We have a shortfall. So let me thank God in the sincerity of all I can muster for moving the hearts of believers so that they vote on election day. I want to thank God for all of the millions of Christians who have given up their civic freedoms to aspire to a citizenship in heaven. I want to thank God for moving them to vote for faith and to vote for self-governance. I want to thank God for the felons in Minnesota, the 50,000 felons who now, because when this thing passes, It's 5.2 million nationally. But in Minnesota, thank you, God, for the 50,000 felons so that they might understand that when they vote for tyranny, they're voting for the system that imprisoned them. Thank you, God, for letting them understand this. And, the prayer matters. The prayer matters. In fact, blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for creating the light in the dark. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for creating me in your image. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for making me an American. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for making me free. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for healing the blind. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for feeding the people. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for releasing the bound. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for raising up the downtrodden. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for creating the heavens and earth. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for providing for all my needs. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for directing my path. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for our American courage. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for crowning America with glory. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for restoring strength to the weary. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for sending the Messiah that I might be saved. Forgive me, my Father, for I have sinned. Pardon me, my King, for I have willfully transgressed, for you pardon and forgive. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds, who is gracious and ever willing to forgive. And a small revelation, I've given myself over to the search for truth and for the propagation of the model of republicanism through my country. And I'm seldom, Tanner, in a position where I have time to sin. I'm so busy doing my thing. They say idle time is the devil's plaything, I think is a idiom. I'm so busy doing stuff, I really don't have time to go. And you know what's interesting? When I do have some spare time, I'm very willing to go off the path. But I'm so busy doing good things because I've had this baggage drop, right? Going back to the last episode, I've had this baggage drop. I'm so busy and I have so much strength. I was weary, but God gave me strength. I'm so busy, I don't really have time. I don't want the time to screw up. Isn't that interesting? So if you find yourself sitting at home playing with your phone and you got free time, what you going to do with that phone? Okay, the news that matters. Let's talk about China a little bit because China is very important. And as my audience knows, I've been to China many times and I have been deeply involved with Chinese culture and Chinese philosophy and a Chinese worldview for, oh man, 1978 is when I started this trip, before it was fashionable. That's a long time ago. Uh, and I'm really struggle with the relationships I have in China. But I recognize in the Chinese the same kind of haughty, self assured, I'm the king of the world energy that I had when I first went to China. First went to China was a long time ago. And they were looking at me with the loving eyes, please teach me. Well, we were more than willing to teach them. And they're great students. And, we gave birth to a superpower. And as we've talked about on the podcast many times, this was the brainchild of Henry Kissinger and Zbigniew Brzezinski and the creation of a global order. We saw it just recently on a podcast. George H.W. Bush talked about the New World Order in front of Congress. This came out of secret societies. It was the aggregation of nations into one world governance, which is pretty much the abrogation of self-governance because those two things don't go together. And the Chinese took the role. George H.W. Bush bailed the Chinese out after the Tiananmen Square event, which is something that we should bring forth. I have a question, Tanner.
Yeah.
Does the word Tiananmen Square?
I know I learned about it. I just cannot remember what exactly happened.
Great. Put it on the list for next week.
What was that first word again?
Tiananmen. Tiananmen. Tiananmen is square. That's the center in Beijing. And I've been there. And boy, I mean, it's like being in D.C., only Chinese style. But I struggle with the Chinese. I struggle because to stop communicating with them, to judge against them, would violate my own desire not to judge. And since I have such deep insight, and there's a lot of parts of Chinese culture I really respect. I'm dealing with all these people in my life. They're people. And I have to sort through my feelings about it. And I'm kind of going through a psychological process here with you because I'm leadership to these people just by being involved with them. In fact, one Chinese friend of mine might be watching this podcast, which is stunning. This is an old friend of mine, and he popped up and sent me a comment, and I really love this guy. And we've known each other a long time. We've never really fallen out of contact. And he's watching the podcast, which is like, wow, wow. So I even have a Chinese audience. Isn't that cool? We want to build that up. So I don't want to make statements that are off-putting because there's so much about Chinese culture I deeply respect. And, there's a lot about my life that's, for example, what I eat. What I eat a lot of Chinese cuisine. Why? It's healthy. It's good for me. It tastes good. The Chinese have 4 criteria for their food. It's got to look good. It's got to smell good. It's got to taste good. And it's got to leave you feeling good after you eat it. Now, when I go to certain restaurants, let's say I get a big bowl onion rings, which I love onion rings. And I don't know why I love them. I love onion rings. Always love. I know why it's coming back to me. My mother loves onion rings. So from the time I was little, we were eating onion rings. And they bring them in and they look great. And they smell great. And they taste great. And baby, if you eat one too many, you're fried, dried, and laid to the side for many hours afterwards. They don't leave you feeling good. So in Chinese cuisine culture, they're an F. They're an F. They're very stringent on this, right? You got these 4 criteria. If you fail on any of them, you're F. It's not a C. It's not a B. Not a B minus. If any of those fail, don't eat it. Isn't that, that's how they think. So, I go to China. I haven't been there since before COVID. But I went every year, for business and sometimes for other reasons, 4, 5, 6 times a year. The food was great. I mean, really great. 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 Really fun to go there just for the food. They have a food culture. Our food culture, hey, hamburger, fries, and a Diet Coke, baby.
It's just gluttony. I just think of the word gluttony when I think of America's food culture.
Well, we're just all, we're only a couple 150 years old. I mean, we're talking about a 5,000-year culture. I mean, so what the Chinese do, we go over there, they drink hard. Hard. They drink. They drink. They drink. In fact, when you drink there, if you refuse drinking with them, you've refused the right of a Chinese man to prove to you what a badass he is. He's pissed at you. Because, if you drink with him, he has a chance to drink you under the table. So if you won't even get in the court with them, you insulted them because they can't prove to you what badasses they are. Smoking. They smoke. Smoke. And I don't mean they smoke a little. They smoke a lot, like a pack a day, normal. Man, a Chinese guy offers you a cigarette, you say, I don't smoke. They look at you like you're crazy because you've denied the right for them to prove to you that they're healthy. Because, who drinks and smokes? The healthy. Sick people can't drink and smoke. So drinking and smoking is a way to prove that you're potent. And I mean potent. I mean, like in a very kind of potent way, like an animal, potent. When we talk about women this way, the word is fecund, but men are potent. So if these men, you won't let them prove it, they get pissed. And then so you sit down at a gorgeous meal. There's like 20 dishes. Everything's beautiful looking, beautiful smelling, beautiful tasting. You feel great afterwards. You drink they drink stuff that you could have a surgery afterwards. They have alcohol. I'm sure it could double as surgical anesthetic. And then they smoke like crazy right in the middle. You're eating, the leader stops, everybody pulls out their chungwas and smokes 5 minutes, 10 minutes, discusses stuff. It's great. And then we start eating again. It's fantastic. And everybody lives to be old. Why? 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 The food is so good. The food is so healthy. And they don't overeat. I remember the first time I saw a Chinese man with metabolic disease sitting out in front of a Western franchise restaurant. I'm not going to mention the name because we like to stay up here on YouTube. But, back in the 90s, the franchise, we exported two things to China: fast food and movies. The essence of our culture. That's the essence of our culture. And I must admit, a Whopper fries and a Diet Coke's awful good. Anyhow, the news that matters. We're going to talk about China a little bit because it's so important to understand what's going on in China, because China and America, hey, we got a thing going on. We got a thing going on. And it's like my friend Tom. Hi, Tom. I say this about Tom. I said this on a podcast, and now it's part of our lore. Tom and I love each other so much. We've been divorced twice, and we're still together. That's how it is with China. We keep getting divorced. We keep getting back together. So let's get some Chinese news in here because we're linked with these people. Chinese factories saw a fourth month of contraction, which means there's a recession. The official manufacturing index in China dropped from 49.4 to 49.1% in July, and any reading under 50 signals a contraction. And here's a quote from a Bloomberg economist by the name of Chang Shu. Quote, looking forward, the economy will need more policy support to pull out of its extended period of weakness. Okay, what they're saying is let loose the cash. Let loose the cash. Nothing like cash to paper over a problem. And the problem is there's a 2-year property downturn there and a property bubble, and properties there are down in value 30 to 40%. People feel poor. They're not spending any money. So, hey, problem. We just sent over, that'd be we the people, our representative, U.S. National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, and he met with Chinese leader Xi, and Xi signaled a desire to further improve relations, referring to the, quote, traditional friendship between the two countries. And there is a traditional friendship. In fact, the United States and China were allies during World War II in defeating the Japanese. Did you know that?
I forgot about that.
Maybe that could go on the list for next week because we were friends. We were friends. The Flying Tigers, Chenault's Flying Tigers. Billy Mitchell ditched his B-29s. Or were they B-25s? I'll have to look it up. They ditched in China when they made their surprise Doolittle. No, not Billy Mitchell. It was Doolittle. Doolittle's raid over Japan, where the U.S. military, after Pearl Harbor, bombed Tokyo on a kind of a suicide mission, and they didn't have enough gas to get back to the carrier, so they flew on to China, where they crash landed. A lot of those guys lived out their lives in China. They lived out the war in China. Some of them actually married into the Chinese culture. Chinese culture has its advantages.
Wait, so just so I understand, the soldiers from America crash landed on a mission, didn't
After
have a way
Pearl
back.
Harbor, you remember Pearl Harbor?
Yep.
There was a great moment of national ennui because we had been attacked, and there was aircraft carriers. Our aircraft carriers were mysteriously not destroyed in the Pearl Harbor raid, and we had a guy named Doolittle, and Doolittle was a very senior naval commander, and he made a proposal that they would fly heavy bombers, 2-engine heavy bombers, off the decks of carriers, which that had never happened before. They'd fly them off these carriers, and they'd get these carriers close to Japan, and they'd fly over Japan and bomb Tokyo just for a show of, hey, we're not giving up, boys. But they couldn't get back to the carriers. There wasn't enough gas in these planes. So they flew over Japan, dropped their bombs, and, China's just a hop, skip, and a jump across Korea. You can almost walk across the water to get from Japan to China. And they flew to China and crashed, and the Chinese rescued a lot of these people, and they spent the war in China. Another good story.
Yeah.
How do I know stuff like that? I don't even know how I know it. Anyhow, they want to have this good relations, continue. Xi's tone suggests an effort by Beijing to try to slow the slide in Chinese relations, reported our leftist magazine Politico. But the make nice efforts are unlikely to lead to long-time friendship, because no sooner had they had the meeting than our national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, antagonized the Chinese, and he reiterated in Beijing the importance of tech restrictions on China, and that infuriated the Chinese. Of course it did. Quote, the United States will continue to take necessary action to prevent advanced U.S. technologies from being used to undermine our national security. Okay. So the presumption here is that the United States is still in the up position for those of us who have wrestled. The Chinese are in the down position, and we're not going to let them get up. That's tough. Meantime, this is a really weird one. This one really strikes me as bizarre. Scary. The U.S. and China make nice on finance. In a further sign of warming relations, the U.S. and China have agreed to jointly deal with, quote, financial stress events, unquote. At the fifth meeting of the Financial Working Group, the FWG has an acronym. That's always scary. That'd be like the SS, the CIA, the FBI. Now we got the FWG, the Financial Working Group. Sounds a little scary to me. It was set up last year after Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen visited China. And this is where U.S. Treasury officials and Chinese officials from the People's Bank of China work together to address these quote-unquote financial stress events. They exchanged lists of financial stability contacts. What's that? What are the stability contacts? Wow. I mean, there's contacts in the two countries where if there's a stress event, we got certain people that can stabilize it. This sounds a little bit secret society to me. It just does. I don't know. Could be just me. I'm making up a story. The two sides aim to strengthen appropriate information sharing. Information? I thought they were enemies. They're going to strengthen information sharing about the money. Seems like they're working together. It doesn't seem as antagonistic as it's getting fenced. And reduce overall uncertainty between the Treasury and the People's Bank of China regarding crisis management and recovery. This is how this sounds to me. This is just me, just making up a story. It sounds to me like they're getting ready to manage a financial stress event because they're putting everything in place to manage it. And it occurs to me, if I was a PhD in economics and I'd studied a lot of financial stress events, I'm probably one of these stability figures. And I probably got my PhD understanding a stress event. How did it happen? Which would then empower me to make it happen on purpose in the future and then manage the response. I'm not saying that's what they're doing. I don't have any 8x10 glossies. But I don't like these people getting together in some kind of globalized environment to manage stress events. Because they're creating the stress events, right? The Chinese are about to flood their country with more liquidity. I mean, this creates stress events, creates inflation. Anyhow, let's not go into economics 101 today. I'm already running over. But I don't like this kind of management because there's a saying in China that I learned many years ago from a friend of mine. It was a saying from Chairman Mao. Does that name ring a bell? Chairman Mao?
No, I only know one Mao. Yeah,
Chairman Mao.
Is
Okay.
is that the same Mao?
Same guy.
Oh, okay.
Okay. In fact, this friend of mine went to school with Chairman Mao's son. Okay, give you an idea of how tight I got with this deal. And Chairman Mao said, the bigger the mess, the bigger the management. I'm going to try this again because we have to recapitulate this in our model. The bigger the mess, the bigger the management. The more screwed up things are, the less self-governance we're going to have, and the more tyranny we're going to have. How do we avoid tyranny? We lessen the mess. Like if there's a hole and you're in a hole, what's the first thing you do? Stop digging it deeper. Okay, that's another choice to make. Politics is not a Valentine. Making that decision with your free will. You're picking a path of ideas. Don't look for perfection. Pick a path. And once you've picked your path, get off the couch, find your local party, and practice republicanism. ThePrecinctStrategy.com is a great place to go look. Your local party needs you. Trump Force 47 needs you. 2 months. We got to do something now. Okay? Got to get off the couch. China is not decoupling. There's this thing that China is moving back from the world. And that's not true, because if you go down to Walmart or Target or Amazon or Costco and you start looking at where things are made, they're not made in Ohio, okay? They're coming in from China and Thailand and Malaysia and Vietnam and all these countries all over the world. And you think, oh, I'm buying tires. Well, they had tires. I'm buying tires from Thailand, something I know a lot about. Yes, there is 1 or 2 native Thai factories because there's a lot of rubber tree plants in Thailand. So there's some Thai factories. There are. The other 80 or 85% of them are Chinese factories that moved out of China and opened up in Thailand. And they ship out of a port called Liam Shabang. And it comes over here and says, oh, the tire's made in Thailand. Yes, it is. It's domiciled in Thailand, but it's made by China. Or your stove or your refrigerator or whatever it might be. The Chinese are moving into Mexico right now. So, they're very successful, very hardworking, very smart. And our trade laws never anticipated a group of people that on New Year's, when they toast each other, say, may you get rich in the new year. It's a different kind of ideal, very materialistic. Very materialistic. In my world where I live, and I live in a bubble, the Professor Penn bubble, I judge my life by how healthy I am, spiritually and intellectually and physically. That's how I judge myself. I don't even put the money into the consideration. That's just a way to eat and put put a roof over my head. I'm not thinking about the money. I'm thinking about other matters. But in China, and I think there's a lot of people in the United States that think, we just had that conversation on Tuesday, right, Tanner? I dangle a little cash out there and you say, don't do that. Not interested. That's not important to me. I thought that was cool, and we agree about that. I didn't know I was going to bring this up today, but I agree about that. It's not really that important to me either. That's why I'm doing so well. Now, these folks, there's only one criteria. He with the most money wins the game. Okay. We didn't anticipate that. So the Chinese are going out all over the world, and they're so important in the global supply chains. And let me just give you an idea of what the Chinese are doing, because they're not decoupling. They're just in other countries now. So it's like China Company X in China now renames itself Thailand Company B in Thailand or in Vietnam or Malaysia, or could be in Mexico, could be in Morocco, could be in Spain, could be in Serbia, just to name a few. So there's a flood of Chinese exports that are challenging the global industry because President Xi, because there's this property downturn, can't get domestic consumption to come up. Can't come up. And so they've just decided to, okay, we're going to flood the world. I'll give you some numbers that'll kind of blow everyone's mind. China has the domestic capacity to produce 40 million vehicles, cars, a year, but it only sells 22 million at home. That means it's exporting 18 million vehicles. Wow, that's a lot. China is on track this year to make 750 gigawatts of solar cells, but only needs 220 gigawatts domestically this year. That means about 500 gigawatts, 2/3 of their production, is going someplace else. It is expected to account for 80% of the world's new supply this year in basic chemicals, such as ethylene and propylene. 80% of the world's supply of basic chemical inputs produced in China. Woo, they're not kidding around. Got to pay attention to what we're doing with China. Got to pay attention. When we see that there's all this jingoistic talking that the Chinese are going to take back Taiwan by force, but there's a financial working group that they're managing the money, I don't think that's really a pressing issue right now today. Is it the 5th of September today? I think it is,
It
right?
is.
It's exactly 60 days out from the election. Please do something. Under number 3, the Quislings, could you please play that first clip? Says Quisling in Norway.
In Oslo, Norway, an arch criminal is brought to justice. Correspondents from all over the world are present on the last day of a significant war trial. The Nazi Premier of Norway, Major Vidkun Quisling, having been duly tried for treason, is brought in from his jail cell to the Court of Justice to hear the final verdict. Previous testimony had shown, among other acts of treason, that Quisling had actually helped plan the German invasion of Norway, then urged the Germans to carry it out. The courtroom stands as the 7 judges file in. For willfully betraying his country, for accepting German pay for the betrayal, for causing the murder of hundreds of his countrymen, Quisling is sentenced to death. A last appeal is granted. But of the guilt of the man whose very name has come to mean traitor, there can be no doubt.
I've done such a good job with my preamble that I'm going to have to leave out some pieces that I wanted to play for you, some videos. You know, Norway is a country, right? It was not that long ago it was invaded by the Nazis, the Germans. And there was a Nazi group there in Norway because, there's Nazi groups everywhere, like right here in the United States of America today. And this Vidkun Quisling was a prominent believer in the Nazi ideology, and he participated with the Germans in ruling Norway after the Norwegian people were conquered, and they were invaded, and then a lot of people got killed. So Quisling was the man, and he was actually executed for his collaboration with the Nazis. He was executed by a firing squad on 24 October 1945. Since his death, the word Quisling, Quisling himself has become one of history's most infamous traitors. And the term Quisling, the word it became a noun, not just a name, a noun, and has become a byword for collaborator or traitor in many languages. To call someone a Quisling is saying you're a collaborator with something that's evil. A Quisling. You've probably never heard that before.
I'm not.
See, these are why we do the Professor Penn podcast. We got to pull up these old ideas because they're relevant now. Because here in Minnesota and in many states around the country, California, New York, we now have, basically a Marxist kind of governance. And, they don't call it Marxist. They call it progressive, liberal, Democrat. Doesn't matter. You look at the tax rates, you look at the way things go down and how they fence stuff, and it's Marxism. So I have an operating model in my mind, and here's the operating model. If you don't attack the movement of the American citizens, like if you're a Republican, let's just call you Republican. We'll call you Republican. Like these Republicans that are now deciding that they're going to vote for tyranny because they think that's what they're just letting us know who they are. They're just letting us know who they are. I'm not even going to mention their names because there's many of them. They were Republicans for many years, allegedly, but the American Citizens Movement is forcing them to let everybody know who they really are. They were always tyrannical. And now they're just coming out and saying, hey, we're going to vote for world governance. We don't like self-governance. And they're so tricky about it. Like, oh, man, if we don't vote for tyranny, the Constitution's going to be destroyed. I mean, the line is it's just so profound, like this Cheney woman. And they sit up there with such authority, and then the left lionizes them. Oh, there's a good Republican. Never a Republican. Look at her father. Her father supported torture. That's not Republican. Her father got us involved and pushed his administration into wars all over the world. That's not Republican. There's nothing Republican about the guy. He was a maniac. Remember Vice President Dick Cheney? Now he's got this daughter, Lynn Cheney. She's running around, trying to maintain the neocon deployment of America all over the world in an empire. Oh, she's thrown in with the empire. That's not republicanism. We got to understand what we're dealing with here. And it happens right down here in the local areas. So my operating model is, if you don't attack the movement of the Americans, let's say you say you're a Republican, because we got lots of them. I know who you are, you know who you are, and I know who you are. But let's say you're not attacking the American citizens movement. Okay, I'm not going to attack another Republican. If you lie, I am going to attack you. And if you lie and you attack the American citizens movement, then we're going to have to talk about you, because you're putting on a uniform, so to speak, and saying you're with the American citizens, but in reality, no, you're not. So there's a state senator here in Minnesota named Julia Coleman. We've talked about her before, and she put up a recent editorial in the Star, like the Communist Star Tribune here, our paper record here in Minnesota. And here is the headline. If they win, we lose. American unity must outperform this November. We cannot let biased media and partisan messaging divide us. That's a long title. It should be, if I was going to be the copywriter, I'd say, Preserve the Status Quo by Julia Coleman. Now, she's an elected representative. And we were talking about on the last podcast, we got 390,000 Minnesota citizens with type 2 diabetes. Costs Minnesota citizens $5 billion a year. We've got 48% of Minnesota 10 to 17-year-olds that are living in homes underneath the poverty line. 48% of those people are overweight or obese. 48%. I don't know what my elected representatives are working on, because whatever they're working on, it's maintaining the status quo where we have chronically diseased citizens, and that's not about the well-being of the people. See, if they were Republicans, they would only be concerned about the well-being of the people. That's it, because Republicans are anti-corruption. That's who we are. We're anti-corruption. So if you see I'm getting a little bit upset about this, it's because it's very upsetting, and I'm going to read a little bit here and comment on it as I go. And Julia, it's not personal, it's just business. Julia's down in Waconia, not far from here in CD6. CD6, that's the home base of House Majority Whip Tom Emmer. Waconia, beautiful city, love it. The political conventions are over and Americans are buckling down for what is bound to be one of the most fierce elections of our lifetimes. Okay, that's a judgment. But, it's kind of conventional wisdom. This is a contested election, right? When I speak to elected officials around the country, there seems to be a growing fear that this will be the election that breaks our nation's back. I don't understand what that means. That's a sentence that has no meaning to me. Could just be me. Maybe I'm stupid. Now, here we get really good. Raised in a divided household, I don't care about Julia's history. It's irrelevant. I only care about her policies, what she's promoting. I don't care if her parents were divorced. That's none of my business. Julia, keep that to yourself. We don't care. I have always held the belief that there are good, intelligent people that I love on both sides of the aisle. So because she was raised in a divorced home and she had to love both of her parents, she has a judgment that she has to love people on both sides of the aisle. This is very discrediting because a model that a person has from childhood, that I have to love my divorced parents, is now transferring into loving communists who want to take away my self-governance. Okay. Don't like it. I don't like that, Julia. Maybe therapy is the place to do this, not in front of the Minnesotans that read the Star. Okay. As a millennial legislator, okay, I'm not sure what that means. So is a millennial legislator different than a boomer legislator? Hey, I like drum and bass. That's kind of music for the millennials, isn't it? I don't know what the difference is. It's a label. A legislator makes laws. I really don't care how old you are. I only care what policies you're promoting. So let's not get it down to some kind of cohort. But most importantly, as a mother to 3 boys under 5, I pride myself in putting people over politics and reaching my hand out across the aisle and working to get the job done for the constituents I represent. Well, let's ask the constituents what they want. Do they want self-governance or do they want tyranny? Because when we reach our hands out across the aisle in Minnesota, we're reaching our hands out. You see this federal bill, S2747? This is how we vote in Minnesota. We'll be talking about this shortly. We're reaching our hands out to people who have adopted a communist ideology. I don't care what they call it. It doesn't matter how they brand it. Hey, I can be anything I want to be. I'm an oak tree. I'm still me. I'm an oak tree. From now on, call me Mr. Oak. Great. That doesn't change. What did Shakespeare say? A rose by any other name is still a rose. Oh, that's 500 years old, that insight. And we still haven't figured it out. I'm getting mad now. It's making me mad. I don't put people over my politics. I look at their policies. And if their policies remove my self-governance, I work against them by getting involved in the politics of freedom, human freedom. Because human freedom is part of being well. And we have a state that has a lot of unhealth. And I want my legislators, my lawmakers, to focus on improving the health of Minnesotans and the American people. But not every leader goes to Washington or St. Paul to do right by the people. I have unfortunately witnessed that for many, it is a sporting match. Some wear red jerseys and some wear blue jerseys, but none of them are playing for Team USA. Okay, right off the bat, the level of analysis is so simple and so dated. No, there's 2 jerseys, self-governance or global tyranny. It doesn't matter what their jersey colors are. That's a scam. We got people that wear red jerseys like Lynn Cheney. They're really on the other side. They're what we called Quislings. They're Quislings. They're collaborators. They're collaborators. You know, before the Nazis invaded Norway, nobody knew that the Quislings were collaborators. They were just on 2 sides of the aisle, reaching their hands out, trying to cooperate. And what happened at the end of the day? They were conquered. Now, in those days, the Nazis rolled in with tanks and planes and ships and bombs and machine guns and soldiers. That's not how this war is being fought. This is a war of information, of your political will, and rule of law, which we're going to get to at the end of the podcast. Whether Donald Trump or Kamala Harris claim victory in November, we as Americans cannot let biased media and partisan messaging divide us. In other words, maintain the status quo. Maintain the center. And what's in the center? The British business model of slavery, drugs, and piracy. That's slavery. Everybody's high on drugs of one sort or another, even bad food, and war. So let's not let anything stop us from interrupting the business model where money goes uphill and unhealth comes downhill. Good work, Julia. At the end of the day, it is the American people and the spirit of Minnesota, whatever that is, the spirit of Minnesota. Is there a spirit in Minnesota? Great. I'm missing it. I'm thinking about those 390,000 Minnesotans that are suffering with type 2 diabetes. That's the spirit of Minnesota to me. Okay?
Yeah, I would say the term that pops in my head is Minnesota nice. But yeah,
Great.
our
We're
our
all gonna
leaders
be
are
ni-
not being nice
we're
to our
so
young.
nice, we're ushering in global communism. Nice job, Minnesotans. Who must be the ultimate victor? Minnesotans, American people. Okay, great. In the last presidential election, I saw families break apart, friendships end, and neighbors become enemies. There is certainly much at stake. Don't get me wrong. After I tuck my boys in at night, I spend my time contemplating what type of republic their generation will inherit. Great. But politicians and mainstream media shouldn't have the ability to tear the great nation apart. Regardless of who wins the White House, it is we, the people, who hold the ultimate power. Okay, Julia, are you going to write about the precinct strategy now for the next 2 paragraphs and tell every Minnesotan to get involved in the party, to join your local party unit, to make your will felt in the political process? Oh, but no, here's what she says, because she doesn't want you to get involved in politics. Because if you do get involved, she's going to have to get a new job. Here's what she says you should do. Oh, where did we go here? What did she say? Hang on. Regardless who wins the White House, blah, 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 will we let differences in opinion tear us apart? What I often find is a lack of communication and understanding breaks down relationships. I encourage those who are firm in their political camps to have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine with someone from the opposite party. So go out and have a cup of coffee. Don't join your local political party. Don't exercise your free will. She doesn't even tell people to vote. She says, hey, go have a cup of coffee with someone you disagree with and listen to them. Don't try to convince them. The extreme ends of both parties' bases demand their elected officials maintain a cultish level of party purity. No, we don't. I do not, Julia, demand cultish level party purity. In fact, the rap on the American citizens movement is we're not conservatives. Actually, we're letting go of our judgments. We're seeking self-governance by any means necessary. We want to maintain a constitutional republic. We want to break up this status quo, as we're going to see here in a minute, which is getting ready to end the Constitution. Modern media advertising budgets need the parties to fight and shine a spotlight on extremism in order to sell ads. Well, that's true. Okay? Don't let them win. Who's she talking about? Who's she talking about? Don't let them win. Who's not supposed to win? You mean the people that want to maintain the constitutional republic? Because that's what I think she means. I think she's a Liz Cheney Republican. I really do. Because I'm looking at this and she's saying, let's maintain the status quo. And what's the status quo? The post-World War II Democrat liberal order is the status quo, Julia, not republicanism. You're a Republican, you're in the Republican Party, but you're not practicing republicanism, because if you were, your entire editorial would have been about asking Minnesota citizens to join the Republican Party, which you never mentioned. That is your only mission as a Republican officer and candidate and elected official, is to bring more people in the party so we can spread republicanism. But no. I'm supposed to have a glass of wine with somebody that hates me. Nice work. When we reach out our hands across the aisle, when we seek to understand, we give ourselves the power to become a force that cannot be divided. So let's be a Quisling and get along with people that want to have a communist country. That's Julia. Yes, Julia, that's how I feel about what you wrote down here. So here's what I think. It's either advertising, or you're dumb, or you want to get along with communists. Like Quisling liked to get along with the Nazis. Now, that's not extreme. That's my view from the street corner I'm on. I would like you to write another editorial that says every Minnesotan that cares about self-governance, that cares about freedom, that cares about the well-being of Minnesota citizens, please get involved in politics. Join your local party. Let's change the world together. Please join me in that, and we can be friends. Please play under number 4, the law. The law.
Settled. We are moving along. Now we are presented with a difficult problem. My instinct is to be Alexandrian and solve a difficult tangle with a sharp, clean stroke this afternoon. All our actions must be predicated on law. Everything we have done flows from the Nuremberg laws, which Dr. Stuckert brought forth to the Reichstag in 1935. And now we have to examine those, the blood and honor laws in regard to the problems of mixed marriages and persons of mixed blood.
Not only who is a Jew, but how in each defined circumstance the Jew is expunged from society, the government, the economy, through ordinances. A tapestry, if you'll permit some pride.
The exemptions written into the law allow too many Jews to remain among us. We address that problem by examining each category and every exemption.
The Nuremberg laws are very
When
specific.
I am done. Thank you. Please.
I just say one word more. Now, in the obligation, the obligation to maintain a lawful society, what we would be saying to those, where we are departing from the legal letter and deporting a Jew married to a German, a new law will be required by mandating all these marriages be dissolved. Consider, the Jews are taken away. The German spouses will presumably inherit the property of the Jewish spouses, go to court, a death certificate will be applied for, and what happens to your secret killings then? No matter what you call them. The secret is out, dear friends. Perhaps not inheritance, perhaps divorce. Freedom to remarry. So, a requisite divorce mechanism dealing with all these marriages to be terminated becomes the Reich's responsibility to its German citizens.
Fuck.
I am speaking! Now, except for those initiated before the spouse is deported, the courts are going to be so busy with divorces that the civil courts will be on 24-hour shifts and the litigation wait will be accounted in decades.
Or longer.
Well, I, for one, have no sympathy with Germans who climbed into bed with members of the tribe.
Nor do I. I ask myself, what is this concern? When the ruling principle of our government and our party is to make Germany Jew-free, you are arguing to let these Yids stay, to influence them to operate freely, with the exception that you knew to them?
They're not free. They are not free. The law restricts them. It isolates them. I am merely
Perhaps
speaking
the judge has some
of
special love for them.
Yes, special love for them. Yeah.
For whom? For Jews? Oh, wonderful. You don't have my credentials. Forgive me, from your uniform, I can infer that you're shallow, ignorant, and naive about the Jews. Your line, what the party rants on about, is how inferior they are, some subspecies, and I keep saying how wrong that is. They are sublimely clever, and they are intelligent as well. My indictments of that race are stronger and heavier because they are real, not your uneducated ideology. They are arrogant and self-obsessed and calculating and reject the Christ, and I will not have them pollute German blood.
Please, Doctor.
He doesn't understand, and neither do his people. Deal with the reality of the Jew, and the world will applaud us. Treat them as imaginary phantoms, evil in human fantasies, and the world will have justified contempt for us. To kill them casually without regard for the law martyrs them, which will be their victory. Sterilization recognizes them as a part of our species, but prevents them from being a part of our race. They'll disappear soon enough, and we will have acted in defense of our race and of our species and by the law. This fellow mentioned the law for the protection of German blood. I wrote that law. And when you have my credentials, then we'll talk about who loves the Jews and who hates them. Pigs don't know how to hate. I know, too, that when it comes to the half-mixed, that to kill them abandons that half of their blood which is German.
I remember you.
You should. I'm very well known.
Gentlemen, if I may, for a moment, Dr. Stuckert has raised the question of administrative consequences of evacuation. He is a very brilliant scholar of the law, and I am sure just as totally committed to a Jew-free Europe as any of us. Let us take a moment. Go on with the food.
I just love that scene. I love that. That's another scene. We played some of this in the last podcast about the Wannsee Conference. Conspiracy is the name of this movie, if you want to go look it up. It's an hour. It's an hour well spent. And this was about the law. The law. So when we start talking about state senators or federal elected officials, they're lawmakers. So it's so easy for us to be so focused on this elective politics, not recognizing that the Real game is in the administrative state and the law. We're not even in the game yet. We're over here in a diversion. A diversion. We have to take full spectrum awareness of how our governance works. And the elected officials are part of it, a critical part. But there's all these people that write laws for them, like this Stuttgart there that was, creating these Nuremberg laws. And now I want you to just think about something. They're talking about eliminating the Jews from Germany. That's great. They're talking about what's a Jew, how to get rid of the Jews, what happens. The courts are going to be filled up with all kinds of administrative things. Oh, let me think. Now we're talking about who's an American citizen. And when there's 20 or 25 million people come into the country in the last few years, and they all have to go into administrative law procedures, and those procedures are going to be going on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The system's getting overrun. I mean, it's the same thing, but a little different. Must be some Nazi ideology here somewhere. Killing people is very expensive. Having them be consumers and then making them ill and then parasitizing their chronic diseases, that's a very good business. I like that business. So for the lawmakers that keep saying, let's keep this status quo together, that's what you're keeping together. I don't care if you have 96 kids and you're wonderful and hands across the aisle. What the hands across the aisle is maintaining a fundamentally perverse system. Fundamentally perverse. It has to be deconstructed. That is not an extreme position. That is republicanism. Republicanism. That can't be branded as extreme. The right to a Republican form of governance is guaranteed to us in our Constitution. Oh, but wait a second. Could you just play this next one?
It's a beautiful shot of the sun coming up over the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco at 6:39 in the morning, 9:39 here on the East Coast as we fast approach one of the most consequential elections in American history. The political divide is wide, with both sides of the aisle believing a win for their opponent could doom the country. But the dean of Berkeley Law School argues it's not just politics, but America's founding document, the Constitution, that needs a bit of an overhaul. Joining us now is Dean Erwin Chemerinsky. His new book is titled No Democracy Lasts Forever: How the Constitution Threatens the United States. Dean Chemerinsky, thanks for being with us this morning. So how, in your view, does the Constitution that this country was built on and has been for nearly 250 years is a threat, actually, to the country?
Choices that were made in adopting the Constitution have come to haunt us. The Electoral College increasingly is choosing the president who lost the popular vote. 2 senators per state is undermining democracy. In the last session of Congress, there were 50 Democratic senators and 50 Republican senators, but the 50 Democratic senators represented 42 million people. Life tenure for Supreme Court justices is increasingly problematic. For much of American history, the tenure for Supreme Court justice was an average of 15 years. Since 1970, it's been 27 years. All of these are choices made in 1787, but they've become much more salient in recent years.
Professor Chemerinsky, I understand, this is Gene Robinson, I understand that there are lots of outdated pieces of the Constitution. There's also some really good stuff. I think it is probably true that the founders would be astonished that we haven't altered the Constitution to fit our present circumstances. On the other hand, though, in the real world, wouldn't it be madness to try to change the Constitution at this point when the country is so polarized, so angry, and so unable to agree on anything? All those foundational principles, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, our freedoms, would be in jeopardy, it seems to me.
You're right. The country is deeply polarized, and that in itself is a threat to democracy. Our government has lost the confidence of the people. In 1964, in a Pew Research survey, 77% of the people expressed confidence in government. Last October, it was 20%. In the book, I argue that much that's wrong with the government can be fixed by statute, but also be fixed by constitutional amendment. And I say, rather than a series of constitutional amendments, isn't it time to start thinking of a new constitution? Isn't it absurd that we're governed in 2024 by a constitution written in 1787 for small agrarian slave-owning society? Yes, you're right, of course. There's much in the current constitution to keep. And you're right that the country is divided now, which make a new constitution difficult. But the Constitution was adopted in 1787 when the country was deeply divided. In many states, it was passed by only a few votes. I'm not saying there'll be a constitutional convention tomorrow or next year, but I do think it's time to begin thinking of a constitution for the 21st century rather than being governed under one from the 18th century.
Dean Chim, this is Eddie Glaude. Great to see you this morning. So you're right. The tragic choices that informed the founding document, the compromises that in some ways constitute the through line of our history. I mean, you charted really, really powerfully in the book. But there's this moment that I came across, and I just started, but it struck me, and this is about the threat of secession, that if we choose not to do anything, if we fail at the amendment process, if we fail at kind of thinking about this document in this holistic sense as you commend, there is the real threat of secession. Talk a little bit about that consequence as you see it.
What happens if we do nothing? We can continue to muddle along, but I worry about how long a government can survive where it's lost the confidence of the people, or how long a government survives when society is so deeply polarized. We could drift towards authoritarianism. There are a lot of democracies in the world that are no longer democracies. But there's also the possibility that we will start hearing serious talk that what divides us is much greater than what unites us as a country. And so I think we have to think of the abyss. I am not arguing for secession. I'm not saying it's likely in the foreseeable future, but it's certainly a path that could happen if we don't repair what's wrong in the American government.
The new book is called No Democracy Lasts Forever, How the Constitution Threatens the United States. It is on sale now. The Dean of Berkeley Law School, Erwin Chemerinsky. Dean Chemerinsky, thanks for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to swear. You know, this guy, poster child, lawyer, like that guy that was sitting at that conference in Fonzie, how does he describe our country? An agrarian, slave-owning society. That's one street corner. How about people of faith that wanted to self-govern? What happened to that? Well, because he's controlling the narrative, he eliminates it. We're under attack. Self-governance is under attack from so many different directions. We don't even know what's going on. So let me just say this, and I'll say it again at the next podcast. You have a senior living center by your home. Call them, find out what voting day is. Go there with your cell phone with their blessing. Tell them that you're wanting to participate, and go film everything that goes on. See if there's ballot harvesting going on. Be a protector of the vote. Order your absentee ballot today. Order it. Take it off the street. Put it on your refrigerator. Leave it pristine. Don't open it. When you go to vote on election day, if they say, "Oh, Mr. Penn, you voted," you say, "Really? Here's my absentee ballot. Here's my absentee ballot." And then call the sheriff and claim that there's been a stolen identity and demand an investigation, file a case. Guess what happened to me? I ordered an absentee ballot from the state of Minnesota. You know what happened? It never came. So I'm going to have to track that down. Because what I think happened is between wherever it came from to my house, it was intercepted. Went somewhere else. Because I never got it, and I checked my mail very carefully looking for it. Isn't that interesting? My absentee ballot never showed up, even though I used the process as outlined in Minnesota law, passed by legislators who reached their hands out across the aisle and made the model for voting, which is now Senate S2747. You see how thick this is? This is a proposed bill that if the Democrat, globalist communist, gets control of the presidency and the two houses of Congress, this is their number one priority. You know, you can go find this and read it. I'm going through it, but I want to read this again because the preamble is a legal brief because they know everything that they're asserting up front overturns the law. So they're trying to make up a new law because Dean Chemerinsky wants to change the Constitution. They're coming from every direction. It is the responsibility of the state and federal governments to ensure that every eligible citizen is registered to vote. Not true. It is the responsibility of every self-governing citizen to exercise their free will by voting. See, it's flipped upside down. It's turned over. Like here we have salt on our popcorn, and in China they put sugar. You know, this is the opposite of what it is. What it is changing because of why? Because they have secret conferences like the Wannsee Conference, and they get together, the Dean Chemerinskys of the world, and they say, how do we overturn self-governance? Because the problem with the world is freedom. That's the problem with the world. We don't need people to be well. We need them to consume. And then I can sit in my law school deanship and make a lot of money, and I'm free, but all the rest of you people serve me. And that's what we're dealing with. So this bill, sponsored by Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota, and she normally doesn't get her name on stuff like this, so she's got a lot on her mind and a lot of ambitions for the near future. This bill would federalize elections, which is, you know, a little bit of a departure from how things have been done since when? Since the beginning. This makes everything legal, like killing Jews. It makes everything legal, like killing Jews were made legal in Nazi Germany. This law makes everything legal, like killing Jews in Nazi Germany. That was formerly not legal for a reason. And it's telling us that who's going to vote, how they're going to vote, electronic voting guarantees automatic voter registration. So you're automatically registered to vote. It guarantees that if you're automatically registered to vote and you had a driver's license, you can vote. I mean, this thing goes on and on. I could redact this bill for weeks with you, but let me tell you what this is. This is the end of the system as we know it. This is the start of a new system. And of course, as I said, Dean Chemerinsky, we got to change the Constitution because the Constitution, in our Constitution, guarantees every citizen a Republican form of government. A Republican form of government, not Republican like the party, the philosophy of republicanism. So they don't like that because, you know, they don't like that. Well, they don't like that because self-governance is based on, guess what? Faith. Rule of law that goes back to the way back, like 6,000 years way back. They don't like that. That's not their vision. They don't want a constitution that was formatted in an agrarian society hundreds of years ago because they're progressives. They have this linear view of history that everything's always getting better, which is a lie. There's a lot of things from the past that are way better than the current. But not if you're a progressive. So they take all those good things, slavery, suppression of women, homophobia, xenophobia. That's just going to discredit all the other things like faith, like self-governance, like love your neighbor as you wish to be loved. No. We need laws for that. You can't self-govern that. I could go on and on. But this monstrosity, this is what reaching across the aisle means. This is what means when people are elected as Republicans, candidates that are not really Republicanism people. They don't believe in that philosophy. They believe in the post-World War II Democrat liberal order. They believe in global governance. They believe that we have overpopulation and that humanity, that human beings, are the source of all of our problems. And the way to handle that is to clip the humans out. Remove the humans. Just like in the Wannsee Conference, they thought the Jews were the problem. So they removed the Jews. Does it sound similar to you? It sounds similar to me. Do you see the similarity, or am I tripping? It's a little bit similar, isn't it? On that very unhappy note, I'm going to wish you a healthy weekend and a good weekend. I'm going to try to come up with good stuff for next week. I appreciate your suggestions. Any bill that's that heavy that it hurts my finger when I put it on the table is too heavy. It's too heavy. We're going to go out with a very old piece of music that you're probably not going to know, Fight the Power. It was in the urban community. It was a, early rap, okay? Many people that are watching this might not know this. The power that was being fought then by black people fighting the man is the power we're all fighting now. We better wake up that we're all American citizens and we're all together on this if we want to be a free people. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon again.
Американская фирма Transceptor Technology приступила к производству компьютеров «Персональный спутник».
Whip, I snap, attack, front to back, in this thing called rap. Nigga like a double rhyme double on a heavenly level. Bang the bass, turn up the treble. Radical mind, day and night all the time. 714, wise, divine, maniac, brainiac, winning the game. I'm the lyrical Jesse James. I possess, some say I'm fresh, where my voice goes through the mesh of the microphone that I am holding. Copywritten lyrics so they can't be stolen if they all snap. Don't need the police to try to say them, your voice will sing. So peace, stay off my back, or I will attack, and you don't want that. I possess, some say I'm fresh, where my voice goes through the mesh of the microphone that I am holding. Copywritten lyrics so they can't be stolen if they all snap. Don't need the police to try to say them, your voice will sing. So peace, stay off my back, or I will attack, and you don't want that.